claim may soon come to pass. Join David McCallum as we journey to new visions of the future.
The end of an era is fast approaching, and with it a warning that more than 2,000 years of prophetic vision seem to have come true within our time. Throughout every civilization, from seers infamous to obscure, comes what could be a single universal prophecy, a final warning that is known as Armageddon, 3 days of darkness, the great chastisement or purification, or simply the end of time. On a more positive note, if we go beyond this apocalyptic judgment, some visions of hope arise. Santa Maria, a quiet pastoral city on California's central coast, a place that centuries of prophecy has pointed to as one where something strange and supernatural would one day happen. In the 70s and 80s, ordinary worshippers there claimed to have received prophecies of calamitous events soon to come. Their messages were studied by author and researcher Jerry Castro.
A specific prophecy was given for this particular area of California. Did it involve something that was futuristic, catastrophic? No one knew. And so people began to take that very seriously, in that there was some event anticipated.
Then on March the 24th, 1990, a prayer group at the site of a sacred hill was shocked by the sight of a woman suddenly falling to her knees in an ecstatic trance. This stranger to Santa Maria was 42-year-old Barbara Mathias.
I heard an audible voice, only 2 words, look up. And so I looked up, and that was when I saw the Blessed Mother. She said to me that it was absolutely very important that I come to live in Santa Maria. And she said, do not be afraid. You will see me again. I will arrange it.
This mysterious woman, born with the genetic disability known as Turner's syndrome, rented a room in Santa Maria where, behind closed doors, she claims to have experienced daily apparitions of Mary. At precisely 4:30 every afternoon, Barbara Mathias drops to her knees, her head falls back, and her unblinking eyes fix upon the vision she claims brings urgent messages for mankind. She can remain in this unnatural position for as long as 6 hours.
Generally, I'm at home. However, Blessed Mother has appeared to me in a plane. She's appeared to me in a car. She's appeared to me on a bus. This is an age where people go for very material things and turn away from God. So her whole purpose in coming is to bring the souls of her children back from a way of sinfulness to holiness.
Barbara claimed to have messages from Mary containing urgent warnings that the recent increase in earthquakes, fires, and other natural disasters are signs of more dire devastation to come. As word of the messages spread, so did the rumors about the mysterious stranger bringing them. Was Barbara a part of the Santa Maria prophecy, or was she merely disturbed?
The question was this. Barbara Matthias has come to Santa Maria. She is claiming apparitions of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Rumor has it she's schizophrenic. Is she inventing all of this herself? Is it a hoax? Or is she psychologically disturbed? We must look and see, and we must do it seriously.
Castro helped assemble a team of scientific researchers and doctors to perform a battery of medical tests on Barbara. Present at one of these seemingly painful experiments was Barbara's church-appointed spiritual advisor, Father Richard Joseph Culver.
I was involved in being a witness to one of the tests. She was all hooked up, and they had all kinds of machines. Everybody present, we cried. It was so painful to watch her.
While awake, Barbara felt normal discomfort. But in her trance, she was oblivious to pain. Most people would flinch from a needle to their eyeball. Barbara barely blinks.
I asked Blessed Mother during an apparition, I said, Blessed Mother, they've asked me to ask you if you would like me to go through this testing. And she smiled and she said, yes, because this will all help further my plans.
After neurological tests, psychological screenings, lie detection experiments, and state-of-the-art brain scans, the scientists completed their investigations. Coordinating researcher Dr. Linda Davenport summarizes their findings.
She has no mental illness that falls into any diagnostic category. We found out that she is truly in a different state of physiological functioning and consciousness during the apparition. We found no way that she could possibly fake the experience. We were impressed with her sincerity and had no way to explain away what was happening.
Anna Marie Magenberg, a nurse on the research team, recalls another experience with Barbara that was eerily unexplainable.
There was one particular time that Barbara was present in my home, and she was having a private apparition. And we went to just shift her position, and we could not move her, no matter how hard we tried. You have to understand, Barbara is only 4 feet 8, and she weighed 96 pounds. She felt like 500 pounds of cement. As we shifted her, her body moved, but her face remained intact and still fixated on the point, even though her body was moved.
As with others who have reported seeing the Virgin Mary, Barbara claims to have been involved with healing.
I was working as a volunteer, and they asked me to go downstairs and admit a patient to the hospital, and she was very weak. Her cancer was in advanced stages. She was bordering comatose. The medical staff gave her 26 hours to live. I got her settled in her room. She fell asleep, and as she fell asleep, I had a desire to pray. And so I extended my hands over her, and I began to pray. And as I prayed, I got an enormously hot feeling going all through my hands and my whole being. The next day, I went to the hospital not knowing what to expect. She was walking around. Her cheeks were rosy, and she said that every pain left my body. So the doctors checked her out, and the cancer is gone.
Even large groups of people have reported feeling the presence of another worldly being during Barbara's apparitions.
People will report that they're engulfed in a scent of roses. Sometimes people will describe a heavenly perfume. Sometimes people will report their rosaries will turn golden right in their hand.
When other worshippers are present at an apparition, Barbara sometimes guides their hands to touch what they say feels like the Virgin Mary's hands and feet. 12-year-old Corinne Caswell is among those who have experienced this phenomenon.
We walked in kind of during the middle of the apparition, and it was a locker room. And I was really surprised that there was an apparition in a locker room, because I thought all these holy things like apparitions happened in churches, chapels, holy places, not in a locker room. We watched Barbara, and she was just kneeling, and she was looking at a chalkboard. I just got this totally different feeling. And it was a feeling that I've never felt before, and a feeling that no human words can describe. After a couple minutes, she slowly put her hand back, and she didn't even turn her head. And as she slowly put my hand up, I could feel fingers of a woman touching my hand. And it was just one finger at a time, going over my wrist. And a feeling of love went all through my arm and then through my entire body. After a while, I looked up at the chalkboard, and I started to see a light, sketched out vision of a face. Then it slowly became more detailed and darker. Then I really knew, oh my gosh, it's Jesus.
This strange woman who communes with heavenly spirits is content to spend her days as a menial worker in a fast food restaurant. Why was she sent to Santa Maria at this point in history? Are her apparitions of the Virgin a warning of a divine chastisement soon to come? That theory is supported by author Michael Brown.
A chastisement is a purification. It's an event allowed by God, or perhaps sent by God, to purge evil. It's God's way of putting the world back into order. Right now, we're being warned like never before.
Although these warnings have come to Barbara in the form of secret prophecies, she has shared them with Father Culver.
Barbara does have 5 secret messages from the apparition. They're a call to change. That's another word for conversion. To change our lives.
She also is giving warnings. And she gives those warnings through Barbara, that the time to change is now, because it might be too late.
Some scholars argue that sightings of the Virgin Mary often come as warnings of bloodshed in far-off lands, such as Kibeo, Rwanda, or Medjugorje, Yugoslavia. These visions are allegedly accompanied by phenomena such as healings or prophetic messages that seem almost miraculous. A married couple in Canada claimed that the miracles began at home when they least expected them. In Toronto, Canada, a 37-year-old plant manager would unexpectedly become the messenger of further warnings of catastrophe.
The Lord forecast to him several events that have come true and warnings of other events in the future. He claims the Lord warned him that there were 2 other diseases being prepared by evil forces right now that would be even worse than the AIDS virus. He claims that there will be this major war again in the former republics of the Soviet Union.
In 1989, Croatian immigrant Jim Singer was an upwardly mobile executive with a wife and 2 children.
And if somebody would have said to me, you are going to have an apparition, I would have said, what was in your coffee? I would not believe them.
May the 18th of that same year began as an ordinary Sunday for the Singer family.
That was the day before our 19th anniversary. That night, we got in bed. We had nice discussion, my husband and I, how we gonna spend following day. Suddenly, in the midst of our conversation, my husband stopped talking to me. And that moment, I felt very powerful vibration all over around us. So I didn't know what's happening to him. For a moment or second, I thought maybe he got heart attack or something.
Oblivious to his wife's attempts to rouse him, Jim Singer recalls a blinding flash of colored light.
In the midst of that brilliance, a person came walking me, a male, and he started speaking to me.
That very moment I saw he was covered with beautiful, brilliant light, and he was transformed. He started talking to someone. The only word that I understood, that sometimes Jim said, "Our dear Lord," but I wouldn't dare even think that this is God.
For the next 100 days, Natalie Singer witnessed a nightly cycle of apparitions in which Jim claims to have seen Jesus, St. Peter, and the Virgin Mary. On occasion, Natalie says she watched as a mystical power actually lifted her husband high above their bed.
I was lying in bed, and then I hold his hand, and after I couldn't, so I pulled down my hand because that was too high, and he was in the air. I never saw him so happy.
Author Michael Brown has studied visionaries from around the world and is convinced that Jim Singer is authentic.
His experience, probably as extraordinary as any I've ever seen claimed this century. And his messages are very powerful. His messages convey to us the sense of urgency of the time.
One of the first things that our Lord said was that the time has come that without his direct intervention, this world will not survive.
My husband, many times, he grabbed for the pillow. He couldn't stand that. Whatever he saw, after he explained to us as a family what he saw, and he put pillow in his eyes. He couldn't watch that. And in one apparition, I saw tears in his eyes, and he said, "Dear Lord, please help us, save us."
And suddenly, before me, it was like on a screen. Very, very dark skies, I mean black. Bodies, people wandering around aimlessly, hunger. Individuals that were crying for drink and nobody would give it to them. Everybody was in a daze. What he showed me is if you continue on this path, this is what will happen.
Some of Jim's nightmare visions came in the form of prophecy, as one warning of a devastating plane crash soon to come.
No place, no time, no date, no specific airline, none of those things. All our Lord said, fascinating, even the words, you know. And then you read testimony after testimony, what people felt at that time. How they felt touched by something that one would consider, well, very unusual, and certainly many would say miraculous.
Through his 100 days of apparitions, Jim Singer was reportedly shown images of a world gripped by conflict. Storms, earth changes, and tribulations of biblical proportion.
And says basically what all of these other apparitions say, that if we don't come back to the Lord, that our entire system of economics, our entire militaries, our nations, our world community will unravel out of control. The time is now, the time is urgent, the time is extremely urgent, and that's why we're seeing all of these manifestations around the world.
This flood of prophecy and images of destruction are seemingly being received by ordinary people all over the world. Are these supernatural voices giving us one final chance? Over 100 years ago, in the city of Paris, in France, a successful author apparently used his considerable knowledge of science to foretell in uncanny detail the wonders and terrors of a distant future world. Jules Verne, a master of storytelling and a profound source of prophecy. His tales of timeless adventure set in future worlds have captivated the imagination of people everywhere in books, magazines, and motion pictures. And although readers of his day considered his books escapist entertainment and science fiction, hidden within the pages were almost photographic descriptions of the 20th century. In a newly discovered century-old manuscript entitled Paris in the 20th Century, Jules Verne describes a future world so dark that his editor felt it too grim to publish. Author and Jules Verne scholar Walter James Miller.
The homeless are wandering the streets. In Paris in the 20th century, hordes of homeless. There are subways. They come out on elevated platforms at certain places. He foresaw skyscrapers. He saw buildings 70, 80 stories high.
In Verne's time, people traveled by horse and buggy, yet he accurately described modern transportation.
There are motor cars. Verne even tells us how the driver operates it. He has a wheel and a pedal and accelerator.
At a time when news traveled slowly and entertainment was provided by the printed page, Verne foresaw millions simultaneously listening to music transported through the air. Not only did Verne envisage the vacuum tube and the wonder of radio, he wrote about solid-state electronics, a technology that has only made its way into our homes and offices in the last 10 years. Screenwriter Gavin Scott.
One of his predictions in trying to imagine how news would be disseminated in the future, that he had the idea that you would call up a news bureau and get an individual report from an individual person about whatever it was you wanted to know. His idea is something that the internet and computers are making possible today.
In 19th century Paris, Jules Verne watched an innocent world shattered by the forces of the Industrial Revolution. As the American Civil War raged, Verne took note of the reports of death and destruction. The carnage sparked his imagination. He envisioned a killing machine greatly superior to anything the world had known. He also foresaw powerful leaders unleashing weapons of war that would fly, 40 years before the first aeroplane left the ground.
He conceived of powerful, charismatic individuals seeking to gain control over others by using heavier-than-air machines, machines that they could bring over the cities of the world to terrorize the populace, to drop propaganda down on them, to drop weapons down on them, to establish their mastery.
Verne also wrote of another flying machine, only this time it was wingless.
I find his image of the flying ship powered by helicopter blades one of his most sinister. Obviously, the technology of powering heavier-than-air machines through horizontal blades has come to pass in the 20th century. And the idea that it would be used to terrify and control people is one of the darker and more sinister notions that he had.
Verne wrote of war waged not only in the air, but also under the sea.
He predicted the development of the submarine powered with electric power. Clearly submarines existed before he wrote 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but he was able to imagine how they might develop and do it convincingly. Imagine how they might develop as deadly weapons of war and how they might influence naval strategy and the fate of great nations.
And Verne's powerful machines knew no earthly bounds.
He was able to foresee the moonshot, not only where it would come from in Florida, not only where it would land in the Pacific to within 2.5 miles of where the Apollo capsule did actually come down, but also the height and weight of the vehicle that they went in, the material of which it was made, aluminum.
A man who experienced one of the most fantastic voyages of all time was so moved with the accuracy of Verne's descriptions that he sent a letter to Verne's grandson.
Colonel Frank Borman, when he came down from the Apollo 8 shot, said it certainly was no coincidence that our spaceship was 20,000 pounds and Verne's was 20,000 pounds, that our space capsule was 12 feet high and Verne's was 12 feet high, that we were launched from Florida, just 100 miles away from where Verne said that the Americans would make their first space shot from. And we splashed down in the Pacific 2.5 miles from where Verne said his space people would splash down.
That woman remarked that his wife had read the first part of From the Earth to the Moon and had been terrified because it ends with the space capsule missing the moon and going into orbit around it and being stuck. And he'd said to his wife, well, read part 2 where they get us back and you'll be reassured. But he was that convincing.
Perhaps Jules Verne's most disturbing fantasy is one which haunts our world today. Fictional characters in one of his science fiction books describe what may be the atomic bomb.
Jules Verne foresees nuclear warfare. 2 or 3 characters say things like, someday they'll build a tremendous boiler and it will blow up the planet. And another character says, yeah, and I bet it'll be the Americans. And the third character says, yeah, they are great boiler makers. So the boiler becomes a symbol for him of something that you can build too tight, hot, and everything else so that it'll blow its safety valve.
Did Verne really foresee machines of the future? Or were his descriptions so detailed that successive generations were able to build them as if working from the blueprint of a prophet?
He was able to so inspire people that they tried to do the things that he had dreamt of, and thus he started to make the future happen.
Jules Verne died almost 100 years ago, yet he clearly described what appeared to be freeways, fax machines, voyages to the moon, and the atomic bomb. Could Verne's prophetic visions be merely informed scientific speculation, lucky guesses? Or are they something more profound? In 20th century America, a heavenly whisper may on occasion bestow upon ordinary people the gift of prophecy. June Gatlin claims spiritual ties reveal future events, as the death of a president, the freeing of Nelson Mandela, and the breaking apart of the Soviet Union. From the very beginning, June showed signs of a gift that would come to dominate her life. She reportedly was born with a thin membrane or veil over her face, a traditional African omen of psychic powers. Prophet June Gatlin.
They have the ability to see beyond the veil. And so they have precognitive abilities, paranormal abilities.
Even as a child, June possessed a powerful gift. Author Joyce Knoll.
There are people who are especially blessed, who are in touch with their gifts from the date of their birth. June Gatlin was a prophet and a healer at an early age.
June soon learned that healing others could mean harming herself. By age 3, she was reportedly besieged at church by sufferers seeking salvation by touching the child prophet.
When they touched me, I would be very uncomfortable because I could feel energy or something moving from me, so I didn't want them to touch me.
She would faint or feel ill because she absorbed their feelings, their pain.
But they would feel better, and I didn't. I was uncomfortable. I hated it. I just knew people's souls. I knew their hearts, and I didn't like knowing it because in a lot of ways it was hurting for me. You know, somebody says that we really like you, but then I would know inside that they didn't.
As she matured, June struggled with the constant attention she received. Yet family and friends pressured her to show off her rare talents.
Now you tell me, what was I doing this morning?
You were washing the car.
You got it, child.
June, say goodnight to these people.
Oh, no. You answer me this. June, last night, what was I doing?
Watch out now.
June, come on, June.
You were with a woman and you were kissing her.
When individuals thought they were hiding, it popped out even more on me. And they didn't know that it hurt me as much as it did.
By her 12th birthday, June claims her psychic energies overwhelmed her physical body.
When she was young, she used to fall into a sleep that would sometimes last almost a week. And her family didn't know what was wrong with her.
Lord, bless and heal this child.
Wake up, honey. Big mama. Dang, how long has she been like this?
I was unable to move. The feeling was so traumatic. The only way I could describe it is being in an amusement park when they used to have those whirly chairs.
June endured frequent hospital stays as her family searched for the cause of her mysterious sleeping episodes.
I spent a lot of time in hospitals, a lot of time with specialists, had brain scans, all sorts of tests.
Needles were put in her, all kinds of blood tests to see why she went into these trances.
It took a doctor from the Caribbean to diagnose June's condition. He traced her trance-like states back to her African ancestry, where psychic children often undergo similar experiences.
I think I might have figured out what the problem is here. Something I haven't seen for a long, long time.
What is it?
Well, where I come from, the people call them moon children. Children born with a second sight or powers, you know?
As she grew older, June's physical symptoms dissipated, but she continued to battle the emotional shadow of knowing the future. Then one day, she received a vision of romance that would become bittersweet.
Before I met my lover, my love partner, I was shown what he looked like, and I was told that he would be the last man in my life. Well, I met him, and when I met him, it was at a party.
Oh my God.
When he walked over to the middle of the room, I saw this huge burst and flash of light on the left side of his head.
Hey. So, what's going on?
Just checking you out. So then I went into the kitchen, and he came into the kitchen, and we automatically started talking. I knew everything about him. I knew his heart, I knew his soul, I knew his bones, I knew the marrow in his bones. I've never loved anybody like I loved this man.
All lovers are spared knowing when fate will separate them, all except prophets. June feels that her prophetic gift was a constant presence in her life with Gary.
I would begin to tell him about things that was going to happen, you know, and he said, oh, the game's on today. And I said, oh, so-and-so's going to win.
You know, baby, I don't know why you bother watching the game. I already saw who's going to win. It ain't even going to be close.
Forget it. I don't want to know.
Check it out. Dallas. Dallas.
So he came back to me. He said, whatever it is, get rid of it. I said, if I get rid of it, I have to get rid of me.
At every turn, June's alleged psychic gifts pervaded day-to-day life.
I think I'm going to call Dennis.
Better try Karen's.
Crazy woman.
I'm telling you, baby.
Hey, Karen, how you doing? Hey, listen, you wouldn't know where Dennis is, would you?
Hey. How'd you know I was here?
I would see things that I was supposed to see. I would see things that I had to see.
What June saw was a wrenching vision, a desperate secret eating away at her soul.
So what's wrong?
Nothing. I'm fine.
You're not acting fine.
You're eating my apple.
So they're okay? I paid for it.
You're going to die.
What?
You're going to die.
June struggled to block images of Gary's death, but she was compelled to continually experience the anguish of losing him forever.
I refused to be still. If I kept moving, then I wouldn't have to hear or see anything.
Time had run out. Gary's fate was sealed.
I wanted to know where Gary was, and I saw his feet dancing in a party and everything, so I called a mutual friend of ours. I said, were you at a party last night? I said, was Gary there? And she said, yeah.
June was condemned to see her worst fear come true. According to her, spirit guides came to her with images of Gary's death.
I saw the body in the coffin. It was exactly like, they showed me.
Moments later, June received the dreaded phone call.
And somebody called, and I said, don't tell me anything. She said they found Gary dead. So, that's that.
June claims her otherworldly messengers brought her a comforting image of final peace.
I felt this thing, like, in the left side of my temple, and they said instant death, no pain. Call his family and let them know.
In her last psychic vision of Gary, she claimed spectral presences prepared his body for a journey into the afterlife.
And I watched luminous light beings, and they were standing around, and they were, it was like the body was being purged.
Today, June seems at peace. She claims to use her psychic gifts to help others with personal matters, but she also focuses on global concerns. She sees mankind facing profoundly difficult problems.
It's been a very Frankensteinish type of world that we as a people have created. By 1997, 1998, there's going to be a lot of turmoil, a lot of trauma, where people are going to become more violent in regards to their beliefs. There's going to be a lot of upheaval in regards to Mexico. This country will self-destruct.
But June also sees a future of hope and promise, both for mankind and the world.
But things are really going to turn around. We're going to see masses of people within this nation, and especially in European countries, working to help to cleanse the environment. And so there's going to be more concern, more involvement of everybody to save the rainforest. These things are coming about simply to give individuals an understanding of respecting life, respecting other humans, and what we have to do to make this world a much better place.
One look at the fire in June Gatlin's eyes, one look at the light in her face, and you can see something special burning within. But life isn't always easy for a person with such a gift. Sometimes you can see more than you want and know more than you need. Perhaps it's that way with all prophets.
Coming up next, a seeress of the 1800s who foretold the destiny of the world.
No.
The Bible was written a long time ago. Within its pages may lie a description of a terrible future, a time of judgment and tribulation that some believe is almost upon us. Just how close and how severe that future will be is hard to tell. However, there's a name given to this ominous event: the 3 days of darkness. For over 2,000 years, biblical prophecy appears to have been accurate. In the 20th century, a series of momentous events has occurred. Events the Bible long ago warned would one day come to pass. Author Peter Lalonde.
The Bible spoke 2,000 years into the future, and it told us the main events that are happening in this generation. The Bible said countless times, the generation that sees Israel come back in and regain their land after being dispersed throughout the entire world will be the generation that knows that this is the end time.
Of the end times, biblical scholars offer several interpretations. Writer Gary Stearman.
It tells us that we are living in a particular time period, a time in which believers in Scripture are urged to be especially watchful. Because, as Jesus said to his own disciples, when these things begin to come to pass, then look up, for your redemption draweth nigh.
Exactly what signs will usher in this time of tribulation for now remain a mystery. But some interpretations of the Bible may yield clues. Author Joanna Michelson.
No one single event can really pinpoint the fact that it's the end times. But now, for the first time, we have the capability to bring about what the book of Revelation speaks about. Massive global destruction.
The Bible appears to paint a picture of our modern world, complete with details that conform to current technology.
There are some prophecies being fulfilled right now that could not have been fulfilled in any other generation. Matthew chapter 24, the disciples said to Jesus, "What will this last generation be like?" And he said, "Except those days would be cut short, not one person would be left alive on the face of the earth." And we have the technology now that we could destroy every person on the face of the earth in an instant with the push of a button.
Old Testament scholar Rabbi Ariel Bar Zadok.
These things were specifically prophesied by the sages of the Holy Talmud 2,000 years ago, and we see them coming true now.
The Bible may provide vivid imagery that suggests a 21st century at risk from technological dangers. Author Hal Lindsey.
What they described was very accurately describing a thermonuclear war. For instance, in Revelation chapter 8, it says that something like a burning meteor hits the earth and destroys a third of all mankind, that it poisons a third of all fresh water, it burns up a third of all trees. A warhead re-entering the Earth's atmosphere from an intercontinental ballistic missile looks like a meteor.
The loss of 1/3 of life on land and sea may sound sudden and catastrophic, but many interpretations of the Bible warn that the end times may involve a slow period known as the 3 days of darkness. This metaphor could refer to nuclear winter, the greenhouse effect, or merely a prolonged eclipse. Whichever it is, some believe that men and women will need to seek refuge from vile judgments, so called because these biblical judgments pour down upon us as if from a vial. Author Salem Kurban.
The first vile judgment, boils on the skin will erupt on people throughout the earth. Where these boils come from or why they erupt, it could be from the water they drink, it could be from the pollution.
In another vile judgment, some interpretations of Scripture envision massive pollution poisoning the world's ocean and killing the creatures of the deep. The environmental crisis then literally rises to the heavens, attacking what we now call the ozone layer. Yet another vile judgment follows.
The sun becomes so hot because of the ozone layer that it will scorch all mankind.
Revelation chapter 16 tells us that during this great tribulation period, men are going to be burned by the sun. You have space shuttles that have been up recently with the specific mission of trying to figure out what is the effect of the hole in the ozone layer that's now beginning to grow. Men being burned from the sun. Exactly what the Bible told us.
As the biblical 3 days of darkness continues on its course of prophesied chastisements and tribulations, the blistering sun may give way to even more fearful judgments.
The earth is finally plunged into darkness as earthquakes occur around the world and cities are destroyed and they're knocked down in many cases by 100-pound hailstones.
If the 3 days of darkness is indeed manifested upon the earth, it may come about for a reason.
How did man get in the terrible situation in which he finds himself? An article of Christian faith is that humanity is fallen in nature. That is, man is somehow bent. He is somehow less than perfect. And the help that he needs to become whole again is the pattern of redemption. And the purpose of that will be to wipe out wickedness on the planet and to reestablish some kind of order.
Although the Bible may warn of approaching darkness, some believe there will always be light.
Even the worst-case scenario apocalypse always has a positive outcome. Not only at the end, but even through it, for those people who properly spiritually prepare themselves.
A husband and wife living in Texas take the warnings implied in the Bible of 3 days of darkness with deadly seriousness. And they plan to survive and help others to survive too.
Location is 25 kilometers east of
occupied city of Oakland.
Byron Kirkwood is rehearsing for what he believes will be a time of upheaval, a time when all normal lines of communication are disrupted and maybe only ham radios link the survivors. Byron and his wife Annie believe that our planet is headed for a biblical event not unlike the 3 days of darkness. They feel that survival may require preparation. Operating from their home in suburban Texas, they have built a mail-order business offering survival supplies and information.
All I've done is try to pull together the information provided by other sources, including the predictions of Nostradamus, Edgar Cayce, and psychics and prophet like this, try to paint a picture of what may happen so that we can physically prepare for this.
Although these prophets appear to share a vision of the near future, they differ on the exact form it will take.
There's no predictions that say that any place will be completely safe. Between now and the end of the century, we'll have increasingly large storms, tornadoes, earthquakes, mudslides, forest fires, many of those same things that you can open a newspaper or turn on the news on the TV and hear that are going on now.
The Kirkwoods worry that natural or man-made disasters will disable emergency services of fire, police, and ambulance. If they're right, there will be a need for everyone to become self-reliant and help others.
You won't be able to pick up your phone and dial 911 and have the emergency technician show up to help you. So if you're sitting there waiting for the government to show up and take care of everything, you're going to be awful lonely. You're going to get awful hungry and awful thirsty.
When disaster threatens, the Kirkwoods advise activating a survival plan, and the first step is to have the necessary supplies at hand to counter the crisis. The Kirkwoods have modified the traditional earthquake kit into a grab-and-run bag designed to meet basic requirements.
The ideal of a grab-and-run kit is a kit of things that you'd want to have with you should an emergency happen. The first thing is a first aid kit. You'll want to have a certain amount of water with you. You'll want the ability to start fires when you make a campfire. So it's a kit of those things you'd want to grab when you get in your car and flee your home.
As in the allegorical 3 days of darkness, during times of widespread destruction due to a breakdown of food distribution and essential services, urban areas may deteriorate into chaos. Byron's advice is to move into the country, away from dense population centers, and return to nature.
I recommend that people leave the city and move to a rural area where they can grow their own food, they can have their own source of water.
Living close to the land may require self-reliance, a return to the bicycle for transportation, the preserving and stockpiling of foods, the filtration of contaminated water.
If you have water, if you have food, if you have medical supplies, if you have tools, if you have gasoline, those will be the real money there for a while.
Being isolated in the country may also mean doing without doctors and medical services.
The first thing I suggest that everybody do immediately is take a first aid course, a first aid CPR course. Because when these things happen, you want to be able to stop the bleeding. It may be you that somebody's taking care of, or it may be you taking care of a loved one or a complete stranger.
In any isolated rural existence, Byron cautions that one of the most fundamental problems will be locating food.
We'll be living off the land. We'll have to be growing our own food. We may have to hunt for meat again. Some of the people that are really going to be disappointed are the people that don't think this is going to happen, don't prepare, and sure enough it does, and they live through it.
One possible future scenario that concerns Byron is a series of massive volcanic eruptions releasing poisonous fumes into the air.
There'll be enough volcanic ash in the air that people will literally breathe the sulfur dioxide and keel over dead. You want to find an area in your house that you can seal off so that this gas won't get inside the house.
Byron speculates that an atmospheric layer of volcanic ash blocking out sunlight might offer one clue to the story of the 3 days of darkness.
You can have candles, but the winds are going to be strong. The candles may get blown over, blown out, or catch fire. The particular item that I picked to have a supply of during that time is chemical brake lights, because they don't use electricity, they don't have an open flame, they don't generate any heat.
Perhaps the most unbelievable effect of the 3 days of darkness involves what Byron feels will be a shift of the Earth's axis, a shift that will trigger a gravitational change.
There may be a time where the gravity will increase when the planet's rotating to the point that we may be actually forced to the floor, kind of like the acceleration experienced by jet pilots or astronauts. But you may actually want to supply food near the floor, so if you can't physically get up, you've still got food on the floor.
Whatever the future may hold, Byron and his wife Annie plan to be a part of it. And if they can, they hope to help others weather any possible storms that lie ahead.
We've moved past our fear by doing those things to prepare, both physically and mentally and emotionally. And I found that when you do prepare, you do get past the fear.
Some predictions appear inevitable, unstoppable, cast in stone. Others are conditional and subject to change.
Turn of the century Germany was a nation of peace and enlightenment. Wonders like the electric light and telephone offered a new age of promise. It was during this tranquil time that a popular soothsayer, a seeress named Regina, prophesied not the calm of the present, but rather the ordeal of wars to come, and a time when civilization as we know it might disappear. John Hogue, a man who has made a career researching and studying prophets, has rediscovered this forgotten German visionary.
Seeress Regina is the nickname for a German prophetess of the early 20th century. She was perhaps the most famous German prophetess of that time.
As was the custom of the day, the wealthy would entertain their guests with mediums and fortune-tellers who could tell them about love, finance, and adventure.
Most of her readings were done in parlor rooms and in parties that had many of the most esteemed aristocracy of Germany and the Austrian Empire. Seeress Regina has been called by some of her followers the German Cassandra.
Regina, like Cassandra, the ancient Greek prophetess, foretold of wars that would bring down entire nations. She also foresaw a war in which millions would die. When World War I broke out, Regina's fame suddenly spread throughout Europe. One prediction had come true, but there was another, a second war which would dwarf the first, and this time she described a man who would set Europe on fire.
She warned of Adolf Hitler. She called him this man who would replace the king and emperor, or the Kaiser. He will lash the whip, she says. Now, before Hitler took power, people in Munich in the 20s used to note that he was this man who used to run around with a bullwhip.
Of Hitler's rise to power, Regina wrote, "An iron crown is for thee, German nation. A man of supreme power is holding it." And of his view of the assembly line murders, she prophesied, "The German nation will be standing the test, not by weapons of iron or brass, but by proving whether its deeds are high and lofty." Regina also foresaw the future consequences of such evil when she wrote, "The iron crown will press and weigh heavily upon thee for many years to come."
Even to this day, the Holocaust of the Jews and other war crimes still haunt the German people.
Like the prophecies of both Nostradamus and the Bible, Regina foresaw a future that may encompass the unraveling of civilization. Of our near future, she wrote, "We will live in an age of ill will, error, and decay. Whoever survives has stood his fiery ordeal. Men who speak in all tongues will dash against each other. A peculiar generation will exist on this earth, which does not carry an inner growth, but only death for the whole race. Whatever the country in which they live, they are all united by an old law which provides that they wither and die."
She describes a kind of people that will be born among us, which are almost like the cannon fodder for Armageddon. It's somehow necessary these people enter and incarnate into our world and then fulfill their destiny, which is a destiny of self-destruction. And of that prophecy, she says, mankind will be decimated by famines and epidemics and poison.
The future is approaching at a quick pace, Regina wrote. A great catastrophe is threatening. Fires burn at a distance and weapons rattle. The earth itself will writhe in agony. The world will never be the same as before. From the aristocratic parlors of turn-of-the-century Germany, Regina foresaw a catastrophic event that might transform the earth and a haunting prophecy of survival.
She describes the coming of an ecological disaster which will decimate humanity and leave only a handful to build the world.
For those who believe the end times are near, Regina's prophecies may offer hope. Regina wrote, "After the catastrophe, they will emerge from their caves and assemble. Only a few will be left to build the new world." How would a handful of mankind survive? In caves? Or perhaps in shelters underground? It's believed in Regina's final prediction she has described exactly that. She writes, "The old eternal law induced them to dig their own graves. They're digging them also for their souls. When the sun will rise again over the graves in golden glory, a new generation will arise in the course of time and create a new mankind." Some believe that Ceres Regina may have been forecasting a terrible upheaval, followed by a crumbling civilization where the survivors sought refuge in caves. For a modern-day father and son, refuge from an apocalyptic future might also be found in a kind of cave. In fact, in a secret and sophisticated underground lair.
I'm a believer in the old prophecies. The Old Testament, Book of Revelations, Nostradamus, Edgar Cayce, the Great Pyramid, Mayans. They all seem to indicate that this particular age, the cycle of evolution on Earth, was coming towards a finale.
And many people aren't going to make it. Matter of fact, I've heard estimates where the population of 6 billion is going to be shaved down to 500 million.
I'm a doctor. I'm pretty much a pacifist. I don't look for trouble. When trouble comes, at this point, I'm ready to go to the hole in the ground and let it pass over.
This father and son insist their identities remain an absolute secret because they have something to hide. It's a hole they've dug, an underground refuge.
This family is meant to be protected, and we've taken the necessary steps to ensure that we are going to be protected.
The threats that may drive this father and son underground go from disaster inflicted by Mother Nature to destruction unleashed by an act of man, such as a nuclear war.
I feel the threat is almost beyond the scope of the average human mind to comprehend. I mean, are we so arrogant in this country that we think that nobody wants to take us out? We're the #1 target in this world.
The United States Central Intelligence Agency estimates that by the year 2000, over 20 countries will have long-range ballistic missile capabilities. And today, even smaller countries seek to become nuclear superpowers. The designer of an underground fiberglass shelter, Walton McCarthy, explains.
We had an opportunity to secure the unemployed nuclear scientists from the Soviet Union. We had that opportunity, and we blew it. And they went to the Middle Eastern countries, and I don't think they're working on refrigerators. We know that, in fact, there are some nuclear weapons missing out there, and we know now that a nuclear weapon can be delivered to a site in a child's day pack and remotely detonated. There's a whole nuclear black market, all the ingredients, uranium, plutonium, it's all out there. It's just a matter of time.
And I'm not going to take the defeatist attitude that we're doomed.
So with all these reasons in mind, we've gone ahead with this underground shelter. We plan on taking care of ourselves. We want to be sovereign.
They have buried their means of survival. A fiberglass bomb shelter in a remote and secret location, hidden away from prying eyes. And when this father and son feel that time may be running out, they plan to lead their family down into the ground where a year's stockpile of food and water awaits them.
The modern disaster shelter is designed for not only bombs or some type of exploding device falling on it, but it's designed for gunfire, earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, nuclear environments, chemical environments, and biological environments.
If there are outside intruders that want to break in, I mean, this thing is grenade-proof.
If someone tries to force water or flammable liquids into the air manifolds, they can turn the valves and shut that off. And they're also baffled, so the fluid actually can't go around the corner. If someone tries to drive a car over it, locking those shelters in, we have a 6-ton screw jack that can lift 6 tons of debris off the hatch. There's nothing to attach onto the entranceway. There's no hooks or anything that someone could try and hook a cable onto. There's a whole list of ways of resisting intruders trying to break into it.
Another way to defend against intruders is to hide from them. Once these fiberglass shelters have been buried and the natural vegetation has grown back, they can almost defy detection.
A lot of people do a great job of camouflaging it. It's so good that they can't find it. And they forget where it is. And the only way that I know of to find it is to go get a metal detector and go out there and try and hunt for it. I mean, some of these people do a really elaborate job.
Drawing upon the technology of prefabricated housing, modern bomb shelters can be manufactured in factories, then trucked over back roads to remote sites. Once a hole has been excavated, these modular units are lowered into place and then assembled. Within hours, they are covered with earth.
It has a water tank, it has normal lighting, it's got a manual flush-up toilet, it's equipped with carbon to filter out the radioactive iodine gas from a nuclear weapon and to filter out the chemical agents from chemical warfare and the biological agents.
While the United States abandoned its shelter program in the late 1960s, the rest of the world continued to prepare for war.
We are one of the few industrialized countries that does not provide sheltering for our people. In Sweden and Switzerland, for example, it's a building code requirement. China, North Korea, Japan is certainly building now. If the world is so safe, why are they doing this? In this country, we don't think about disasters. We don't plan for them. We assume we're safe until circumstances prove us wrong. That's the American culture.
So in the United States, who feels threatened enough to purchase a shelter?
If there's one area in the country that I'd say is good for us, that would be the Washington, D.C. area. We've sent out an order for 20 at one time in Washington, D.C., or in the outskirts.
I don't know where they are putting them, but I'm sure they're putting them in a secure place for themselves and their families.
People in Washington know exactly what's going on. They know what's coming.
You have to keep in mind, we've had over 15,000 wars since the beginning of recorded history. And to say that we're not going to have another war is to say that human nature has changed.
There isn't any question in our minds that we're going to need this. The question is when. Better to be 5 years too early than 1 day too late.
The cost of a subtech shelter is less than that of a luxury automobile. But will we need to tunnel beneath the earth in order to survive? More importantly, if we do, what kind of world will be waiting for us when we crawl out from under the ground? For one living American prophet, our near future will stand as a test. His visions are of a nightmare time when an angry Mother Earth passes judgment upon us.
John Running Deer is a man caught between two worlds. A resident of Long Island, New York, he is a Native American who carries on the age-old mystic tradition of the Shinnecock tribe oracle. But John is also a modern man. He works in the aerospace industry and flies for the Civil Air Patrol. Over the last few years, John has combined the predictions of the prophets Nostradamus and Edgar Cayce with the teachings of Shinnecock elders and images of a future world that have been revealed to him through his spirit guides.
Everyone does or has spirits who watch over them. And it's these spirits that guide us and tell us things that we need to know.
Recently, John Running Deer experienced a premonition of a continent vastly altered by natural forces. Traditionally, the Shinnecock don't discuss their spiritual affairs, but John felt compelled to share his urgent warning.
You are going to be seeing horrendous storms. They started last year. They will increase in magnitude and frequency for the next 4 years. Those are the cleansing storms that will be cleaning the earth, getting ready for the bigger changes that are coming.
John has deciphered this vision to be a critical warning from the world of the spirits.
The spirit world telling puny man it's time to start paying attention to what we're telling you. We as people have not learned to live together peacefully. We have not learned to live together in harmony with the earth. Therefore, this continent of ours has to be cleansed. If you pay attention to the things around you, you can survive these changes.
With guidance from the spirit world, John Running Deer has produced an atlas that depicts a North America drastically altered by violent forces. But John's not alone in forecasting geological transformation. Futurists Laurie Toy and Gordon Michael Scallion have both predicted traumatic earth changes in the United States landmass that bear an eerie similarity. In each person's map, the west coast is lost to ocean, the Mississippi floods, and the east coast is dramatically altered.
The coastal areas will be changed dramatically. The west coast because of earthquakes and landmass losses. The east coast partially to earthquakes, a great deal to floods. Once the earthquakes happen in California, the only thing that will be left of the entire San Francisco area on the west coast will be the north end of the Golden Gate Bridge. What will be left of it will be the north end with the cables hanging down in the water like the arms of an outstretched robot.
Prior to the earthquakes, John foresees violent volcanoes erupting in the northwest.
Before the major quakes happen, there will be more volcanic eruptions in the northwest. So I feel that Mount Rainier will erupt, and it will be probably in the spring of next year or the following year during heavy rains, much the same way as Mount St. Helene did.
According to John, his spirit guide forecasts the onslaught of level 6 hurricanes that will deluge, then drown the great city of New York.
These I've seen through information given to me by my guides, that it will not only be the winds that will destroy much of the city's areas, but it will be the massive amount of water. The water will drive. There are areas, one area in particular, one building in particular on 42nd Street across from the public library. It has a concave front. If that building is not evacuated, the storm, the water itself will crash through the glass windows and flood the lower floors, flooding and stopping the elevators, and many, many people will be hurt or killed.
If all of John's visions come true, these storms may mark the beginning of what Native Americans call the Great Purification.
New York City will eventually be destroyed by a massive tidal wave which will take out the city and most of western Long Island and the Jersey Shore. And the East Coast and parts of the country will start to become a series of islands.
It's human nature to hope for the best, but when terrible things happen, the first question always asked is, why?
Since we cannot learn to live together, then we're going to have to learn to live together in small areas such as the islands. And maybe when we learn to live together better in peace, then we'll get this landmass to come back to us.
John claims spirits speak to everyone, but most fail to listen.
There will always be warnings to every major change that is coming. The best protection is to move anywhere up into the mountains and across into most of Texas, most of Montana. I would stay away from the plain states where they had the great floods last year. I would stay out of the Dakotas in the central section because I strongly feel that lakes will form up in that area.
John contends that warnings of the spirits are conditional. If we pay attention, tragedy could be avoided.
If you live in those areas and you see these changes coming, then take the hint and get out and move to safer areas. Because if I'm right, you could be lost. If I'm not right, then you have nothing to worry about.
The pages of the history books are filled with great civilizations that have vanished into obscurity. However, from these ruins, survivors all seem to emerge to pick up the pieces and begin again. Perhaps there is no beginning and end of time, rather a continuous and well-traveled circle.
Aristocraft cabinets from KBL Design Center mean affordable quality that's built to last. Visit KBL for home decorating products that suit your style and budget.
Scattered across the villages of Central America, a race of prophets has existed for over 2,000 years. Their predictions seem to have been strangely accurate. They have seen our generation of mankind hurtling to what may be catastrophe. Reportedly, their calendar marks the precise day of our destruction.
The end of time is near, says the ancient wisdom of the Mayans. Anthropologist Barbara Tedlock.
On December 21st, which is the winter solstice in the year 2012, the Maya have prophesied in their books that go back to the 1st century BC that there will be a change, a very large change. We will enter the 5th age.
The 5th age may mark the end of history. It's the final cycle of a pattern the Mayans believe is repeated throughout the eons and terminates in the year 2012. Anthropologist Dennis Tedlock.
What happens in each of the Maya creations and destructions of the world is that lots of the beings that belong to the previous world survive. They go on living, and they serve as a sign to the next people who come along of what happened to those who forgot the calendar.
The Mayan calendar is rooted in historical events. As each cycle of time repeats, happenings of the past serve as omens of the future. Author Scott Peterson.
Calendar priests would record the important events of their time on long books made of papyrus. That was the way that they could then predict what would happen, let's say 400 years in the future. They would look at what happened 400 years in the past and use that as a guide to the future.
The Mayans practiced an ancient form of astrology, using birth dates to guide their entire lives.
If you were born on a certain day, that would be your fate. If you were born on a day that said you were a doctor, then you were a doctor. If you were born on a day that said you were a thief, then you were a thief.
Mayan prophecy has foreseen not only the fates of individuals, but great events of mankind. Their sacred writings may have warned of a conquering army that would invade from a far-off land. Professor of Anthropology David Friedel.
There were events going on at the time the Spanish were first exploring Mexico that would lead one to believe that, in fact, prophecy was being realized. The predictions and prophecies in the Chilam Balam speak of the end of the Maya time and the beginning of the time of the foreigners.
Those foreigners committed the great sin that eventually destroyed each cycle of Mayan history, the sin of arrogance.
The Mayans believed everything is sacred. When you don't recognize that everything is holy and everything is sacred, then you lose track of your own place in the scheme of things. When nature and human beings go out of balance, ultimately nature will right the balance. It's the planet itself which is more powerful than the people.
In each Mayan apocalypse, man is punished for the harm he's inflicted on Mother Earth. In making tools and artifacts, the heat and hammering caused pain to the iron and clay, pain that had to be avenged. This holds true for a mythological race ruled the earth long ago.
They looked on the surface very much like ourselves. They grew crops, they had domestic animals. But their heads were really quite empty. They did not remember to say prayers and make offerings. They did not respect the earth.
According to legend, the Mayan prophecy of doom was fulfilled. Mother Earth and her children sought revenge. Tools turned on their creators, and this world erupted in destruction.
Everything the people had made, all of human technology, and that included their domestic animals, rose up against them. Their dogs now talked to them. Their turkeys now talked to them and lectured them about what they'd been failing to do.
The wind roared with fury. There was no escape.
And the earth rose up against them, and their houses caved in on them.
Mayans believe that our fate is sealed. The next cycle will end in the year 2012, and then we too will suffer for mistreating nature. But instead of facing primitive tools, our enemy will be technology. After the final moments of calm, our peaceful world may end.
If you've ever worried about all those things you've got plugged in your house, all those things that are on the power grid that plugs into everything, that food processor in your kitchen, your answering machine and your fax and your VCR, your television, your clock radio. Imagine all of them getting a mind of their own and deciding they don't like you. So the time then to worry about all of these things happening is December 21st, the winter solstice in 2012, according to the Maya prophecies that were written in the 1st century BC. Cats and dogs and caged birds, all of these would come after us. All of them would start talking to us. All of them would turn to attack us. In the previous disaster, it was just tortilla griddles, stone griddles on a fire. Now it could be your waffle iron flying in your face. You're putting stuff into your food processor, and the first thing you know, it's processing you. Your fax machine, you're feeding stuff into it, and the next thing you know, your tie is caught in it. Those are the kinds of things that could happen when everything we've made gets a mind of its own.
Some consider the ancient Mayan calendar the most accurate ever devised. And unlike ours, which concentrates on holidays and phases of the moon from here to eternity, the Mayan calendar has a final date. December the 21st in the year 2012. A day that just might be the last day of our world. Locked inside the human brain may be a time machine. For many years, therapists have used hypnosis to allow patients to visit the past. Reportedly, some of them have spoken in long-lost ancient tongues or dredged up name and events that have lain forgotten for hundreds of years. Well, if it's possible to travel backwards through past life regression, why shouldn't the future be within our reach?
In the course of hypnotherapy, doctors chanced upon a stunning phenomenon. Human minds can not only return to the past, but seem to leap into the future. Over 5 years, Dr. Chet Snow and his colleagues recorded what they believe are the future life experiences of 2,800 patients under hypnosis. Strangely, according to Snow, these apparent time travelers reported nearly identical experiences. Most journeyed to the 22nd century, and they shared only 4 visions of our future. Some saw mankind living in orbiting space colonies above the Earth. Others envisioned small creative communities near the sea, or agricultural communities in remote settings. Still others glimpsed a highly technological future.
They're going to eat us well.
Dr. Snow and his patient Laura Byerly allowed us the rare opportunity to witness an actual progression therapy session. Laura's journey could reveal a picture of her future, and maybe ours.
It's not a party game or a parlor trick that one should do. I think any work with hypnosis is sort of like taking a scalpel. In the hands of a surgeon, a scalpel can do wonderful things. In the hand of a serial killer, it can do horror.
I'm going to count slowly from 1 to 5. And as I count, the cloud will take you to just the right place, where it will bring you back down into a new body. Another physical form.
Dr. Snow monitors Laura with infinite care, keenly aware that manipulating the psyche is a highly delicate procedure.
Now, what's happened?
Reading to students.
All right. And tell me anything about the classroom or the place where the students are. How many students are there?
30.
How old are your students, would you say?
12, 13.
I see. And what are they wearing?
Jeans, dresses.
Okay. Can you find a calendar? Look at it and see. What year does it say?
1966 or 7.
All right. So now we're in this life still, in this body.
Laura crossed the fine line between progression and regression, accidentally jumping back in time. Dr. Snow presses her to reverse course into the future.
They will take you forward to the future. They will take you at least 1 century or 2 centuries from the date that we called 1994. 1 or 2 centuries.
Propelled by the power of hypnosis into the 22nd century, Laura has no control over her journey. She could return to the physical world as anyone or anything.
5. You're alive. Alive in the physical body, in the life, in the time period you've chosen. Look down at your feet. Become vividly aware of the feet there, your feet in that body and time. Take your arms and of the future body and hug your torso a moment. Become vividly aware of your size and the shape of that body. And as you hug the torso, you will know, are you a man or woman in that body?
I just felt like there was a man's body.
Yes, a man's body, right?
I was aware of shoulders and things like that.
Right. Fairly broad-shouldered? Good. Now, you said something about there were some buildings you could see. As you come up toward it, describe anything about it to me. Is this a dwelling or is it some other kind of building?
I guess it's a dwelling.
All right. And tell me anything about it. What is the roof shaped like?
Pointed.
Dr. Snow urges Laura to go further, to examine her future living quarters.
Find a place for you to sleep.
Okay.
What is it like? Anything about it?
It doesn't feel like a private place.
No? Okay. Is there like a communal type of place?
It must be.
Okay.
Hundreds of the time travelers studied by Dr. Snow described a future eerily similar to Laura's vision.
She talked about many people living in the same set of apartments. And this also is very typical of the high-tech kind of environment people. and look at the place where you eat. How many places are set?
3.
And become vividly aware as you... Do you sit down to eat?
Not really.
Okay, how do you eat?
Standing.
All right.
Laura labors to understand mysterious details.
Move forward until you're at a moment when at least one of them is in the room. Which one came into the room?
Just a female.
Uh-huh. Does she seem also in her 20s, or is she older or younger?
Younger.
Okay.
Dr. Snow encourages her to probe further, experiencing her future life at different ages.
What happens if you go forward until you're about 43? Let me count 3. 1, 2, 3. Now. What is it you're doing now?
Suppose something with computers.
Do you push, punch, pull? What do you do? What do your hands do?
Maybe just raise above them.
She saw herself putting her hands over a machine and getting information directly from the machine without having to tap in keys or use words. And this is very typical of the high-tech people.
Laura's journey indicates that some human rituals are unchanged in the 22nd century.
Now, go ahead and describe to me anything about this event. What is happening? What's going on? What seems to be going on?
Weddings.
Which one is the one that interests you?
The girl.
Okay. Tell me anything about her that stands out. Is it a daughter of yours?
Dr. Snow now prods her to experience the greatest mystery of all.
I want you to move into the very last day you live in that life. It's before you leave consciousness, before you leave the physical body. To move into that last day and look down at your hands. What do your hands look like now?
Older.
All right. Are you sitting, lying, or standing up?
Lying.
Okay. Without any pain in your physical body, look and reflect for a moment. No pain is felt. What is it that's going on that's leading you to be in the last days of this lifetime?
It might just be my decision.
It's a decision, like a choice you're making?
It seems like there's a group of people and they all feel important.
All right. Now, I want you to take a breath and let yourself release from the body. Now you're released from that body. You may float up above it. Float up above it and float high up through the roof.
By the 22nd century, death has become a peaceful process. But research points to our near future as a stark and lonely time.
Through all of our subjects, one of the things that stood out was that 2100, which is one of the time periods we took them to, only 5 to less than 10% of our subjects recalled having a future lifetime in that period.
A world with fewer people. That is the vision shared by hundreds of Dr. Snow's patients. According to his research, the next 100 years may see a part of mankind vanish from the earth.
A number of things that might happen to cause this. Epidemics, plagues, such as Nostradamus makes mention of, asteroid or another extraplanetary body coming into contact with the Earth, and that would cause a weather climatic change, like a pole shift. People were indicating that there would be a significant drop in population between now and the 22nd century.
If Dr. Snow's findings are correct, soon the only dwellers of our great cities may be memories.
When we picture a prophet, a sage entrusted with the secrets of human destiny, the image that comes to mind is that of an old man with a flowing white beard seated in a candle-lit room reading from an ancient manuscript. In the real world, a prophet can be the neighbor next door. The Mayans have given it a date, December the 21st, 2012. From biblical writings comes the 3 days of darkness. Jules Verne made Doomsday nothing more than science fiction. while John Running Deer spells it out as plain as day. From visionaries to seers, the warnings are coming together like the pieces of a terrible puzzle. Many are listening to these warnings, and more are preparing. But no prophecy is without hope. For almost every prediction of disaster and destruction comes the promise of renewal and rebirth. And ultimately, we are the creators of our own future by the choices we exercise today. We, you and I, are the masters of our destiny.
To order a copy of Prophecies 4, call anytime, 1-800-333-3362, $24.95 plus $4 shipping and handling by priority mail.
The Olympic countdown begins with this NBC Olympic moment. Basketball didn't always come easy for Scottie Pippen. The youngest of 12, he was not even recruited out of high school, and his college career began as the equipment manager. Now, this 1,000,000-to-1 shot is one of the NBA's greatest players. His dream will take him back to the Olympics on NBC. It's 41 days and counting to America's Games, the 1996 Summer Olympics on NBC.
In 30 minutes, it's the best of Saturday Night Live with Anthony Edwards and the Foo Fighters. Your local news is next.
And coming up tonight on News 25 Nightside, a former Mitsubishi worker says union leaders look the other way after women complained about sexual harassment on the job. And celebrity readers captivate youngsters at a reading program in Peoria. Join us next on Nightside.